On this week in Intro to Philosophy, we are doing discussion number 8, Knowledge Part 2. And we will be tackling question number 1 in all its parts, one part at a time. So the direct question is, what do you make of the simulation argument? The simulation argument is that perhaps we are all, or at least one of us, is in a simulation and everything else around us is a part of a simulation. So think Matrix has one example, and we can think of, and we can also think of Inception as another example. That would be a good one. Anyways, so what do I think of it as an overall conversation? I think it is a fun thought experiment. It is kind of interesting to play around with the idea of whether or not we might be in a simulation, what that means, what it doesn't mean, what that means for us, what that means for the existential questions of what is existence. So that's, it's a lot of fun. That's my overall like thought process of it. And that will tackle actually section A of the questions. So B, part B. Does this all depend on the nature of consciousness and whether or not we can simulate conscious experience? So I think first off, I think it's fun to think that we're actually really, really close to that, and I don't know if we will ever be able to like define the line between experience and the closely simulated conscious experience that is becoming artificial intelligence. And I think there's an overlapping conversation there to be had. But like I said, I think it's only ever going to run kind of on a parallel line and never actually touch into true consciousness. So to simulate consciousness, I think that's possible because simulation is simulation, not an exactness. I don't think we can recreate actual consciousness. I think we can come very close to simulation. All right, so C. Does this call up the questions about the future of humanity and whether we will survive the kind of technological scenarios envisioned? All right, so again, I'm going to shoot this back to the Matrix. That's a good question. I don't know if we can simulate a conscious experience, but to actually plug in a consciousness into a simulation, that is a whole nother like conversation, because you're not simulating consciousness, you're putting consciousness into another universe essentially, where you make the rules of the universe, but the consciousness is still what decides on how it's interacting with that universe. All right, and this so again, like, yeah, if we're plugging in has conscious beings and we are plugged into a simulation because I think physics is easy enough to simulate. I do not think so like realistically, if we are in a simulation, then I believe that all or most humans are real people being plugged into that simulation, very much like the Matrix, where there might be certain AIs designed to interact with us and keep us under control somehow. Think of like the agents, all right, kind of like, and the key maker, and then how all the mythological beings are actually just digital things. Anyways, but yeah, so I do think that if we can simulate physics, we can possibly simulate the haptics of it all, so the sense of it all, what we see, what we touch, what we feel. Not, but I don't think the simulation can actually control what we think. This brings us on to D. if we are living in a simulation, in what ways does that change anything about our lives? Ooh, that's a tough one. So, that comes down to a if or if not then. So, if we are, and I have no means to even begin to understand how to dismantle the simulation, then participating in the simulation is almost my only option because I gain nothing by lack of participation. But on the reverse, if I have means to dismantle the simulation, is that brings up the question of, is that the right thing to do? Is the simulation necessarily wrong? I may not like it, I may feel controlled, but am I being controlled if my actions are still chosen? If am I choosing how I act within the simulation? Is it like, if it's not guiding my choices directly, then like, is it necessarily bad? All right. Again, I'm thinking of the Matrix. I hate to say it, but life within the simulation seems a lot more peaceful, at least, than life outside the simulation. And the world seems, for the most part, topside, mostly uninhabitable. So, like, are the robots actually saving humanity by keeping them in their pods? That's just kind of something to think about. So, whether I know or not doesn't drastically affect how I live my life. It might affect how I make certain choices in certain ways, but it wouldn't change how I go about my life because participating in the illusion, in the simulation, still grants me the ability to at least feel fed, feel warm, feel the comforts of being alive. So there is that. I gain nothing by not participating unless I have a way to dismantle it altogether. All right, so that will conclude my TED Talk. Kind of drawn out. I didn't mean for it to go this long. I hope you enjoyed that.